Hey, it's Laura here at BowerComm, and I'm here today to talk to you about how you can enhance your launch with great communications. When you start a business, the inclination might be you want to run out and get a logo and have certain colors and certain fonts, and you need a website, and you need a brochure, and you need all this stuff so that you can either go to the bank and get money, or you can pilot your idea and start making some sales. But before you get to that, it will pay dividends in the end to go through the process of thinking through exactly who you are as an organization, who you're serving, and how you can best communicate to them. So here's a 9-step process of how you can figure that out. So no matter if you're a startup or a really mature and large organization, the communications and brand planning process is the same. Some of the steps may not apply to you quite as much as a startup, but I thought I'd go through the whole process today so that you can get an idea of the things you need to think about before you hire someone to do a logo or to craft the About Us page on your website or your whole website for that matter. So there are 3 phases: discover, define, and develop. And in the discovery phase, the whole point is to figure out what are the current perceptions around your kinds of products and happening in your space that you're trying to enter. And then also, who's already there and what are they saying? So the very first thing we recommend is interviewing some folks. So this could be potential customers, it could be customers of your competitors or alternatives, anything in your space where you can gather some insights. And there are some just basic questions you can ask, like, if you were to describe the service that I am going to be launching to your friends and neighbors, how would you talk about it? What are your perceptions of competitor A, B, or C? And usually we do these over the phone. They're about 45 minutes, and it's a really great way to gather insight. The next thing to do is to look at your peers or your competition. I like to go to websites, read the About Us page. That's really what their positioning is. That's their core message. So if you look at the About Us page and you look at the different content that's on their website, you can get a real sense for the angle at which they're trying to pursue their customers. I also like to look at their social media channels and see how frequently they're posting and the different kinds of things that they're posting. And there's a really great tip on Facebook. You can go to page transparency and you can see what ads they're running. So the core of the define section of this process is figuring out what the essence of your brand is. So let's look at the car category. We know that Jeep, Subaru, and BMW all make SUVs, but they are positioned very differently. So we know that Jeep is about being an explorer and getting out there in the rough of the world and seeing how far you can go. BMW is the ultimate driving machine. This is about German engineering and precision and being very perfectionist. And Subaru is about love. This is about being out in nature and connecting with others and protecting the environment. So 3 companies, 3 brands that make SUVs that get you from point A to point B, but they're positioned very differently so that people think of them in different ways. So the goal here with the brand foundation is set you up to be a great brand that people rave about. Apple, REI, Disney, all of those companies started out as a startup once, and they have built themselves into beloved brands over time. So we want to start you out so that you're going to have that magic. So this idea that you come up with in the brand foundation is not just a communications theme or a tagline. This will become central to what you do. It will help you decide the design of your facilities. It'll just help you decide the qualities you want in your employees. It's going to define your culture moving forward and the experience that your customers have with you. The next step is to prepare to visualize the message, and this is where you're basically writing the creative brief for whoever is going to make your logo and your campaign to launch with, or design your website or your brochures and that sort of thing. So you take that essence, so whichever direction you're going, are you an explorer, are you a magician, are you an athlete, what is that core persona of your brand? And you lay that out for your designer so that they can come up with something that fits that particular niche that you're going to put yourself in. So once you have your brand story and you're preparing to visualize that story, it's time to move into who you're going to be selling your product to or trying to convince to believe something about your brand. And the way to start is by defining your audiences and mapping out their journeys. No matter what you're trying to convince people to do, buy a product, share a review, recommend you to their friends, the process is the same. The first step is awareness. So we have to think about how we make them aware of a need that they might not be aware of. And pharmaceutical advertising is famous for this. You see these ads for ailments you've never heard of, and then a couple months later, you'll see oh, suddenly there's a new prescription drug for that. So the awareness phase is not about awareness of your brand. It's helping people understand that they have a problem that you are going to eventually solve. If you're a startup, you may be solving a problem that people don't even know they have. In the consideration phase, people understand they have a problem and now they start to research their alternatives. So for example, people become aware that they're hungry and they say, we need to eat dinner somewhere. They decide whether they're going to eat dinner at home or out, and then they decide where they're going to eat. So you go through the typical thing. Do we want Mexican or Chinese? Do we want Italian? Do we want wings? And then you start by process of elimination. You might go on people's websites and see what the menus are. You might go and look and see if they have delivery or curbside, or how long the wait is, or can you put in an order and pick it up in 6 hours so that you can plan ahead. So this is the consideration phase where your website becomes really important, your social media becomes important, and reviews become important. The next phase is action. So we want people to buy your product. So this is where sales promotions like coupons, these sorts of things come into play. It's also where testimonials are really important, or return on investment calculators. It's where people are in the final stages of making a decision to say yes, and you need to get them there. The next stage is reflection. So after people buy your product, they reflect on it and think about whether it was a good decision or a bad decision. So in that time from purchase and through first use, in that first bit of time, it's important to stay in touch with them and make them feel like they made a good decision. Then the final stage is recommendation. So when you buy something new and something great that has never been used before, or a new restaurant or a new service in town, you're gonna tell your friends, and we want them to say good things about you. So this recommendation phase is really important to get people who are recent customers to tell their story, get them to leave reviews on Google and Facebook, and in general be a champion for your brand. So then we move into communication strategy. And our job here is to figure out, how are we going to move people through this journey? And there are certain kinds of tactics that work better at different phases. So in the awareness phase, this is where things like word of mouth or TV or radio, these more mass channels, social media, come into play. As people start to more tightly consider things, they are using search engines, they are looking at your website, they might be looking at blog posts, they might be looking at review sites. So they're diving in much more deeply. Then as we talked about with purchase, your store experience, your website e-commerce experience, that all comes into play. With reflection, keeping in touch with email or other one-to-one kinds of tactics, direct mail, might come into play. In the recommendation phase, right now, Google reviews, Facebook reviews, all kinds of online ways that people share information become really important. Once you have the basics mapped out of how you're going to communicate with your audience, it's important to make an execution plan, because truly, things are going to live and die in execution. So make a project list of all of the different things you want to do for your launch, and then shortly thereafter. Decide what the timeline is and decide who's responsible, and map it all out so that you can stay on track, because the way that you eat an elephant is one bite at a time. So in closing, I'm so proud of you for pursuing a new business. It is, as a business owner, one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done. And I hope that this process will help you have some guidance on how you can set up your business for success, a great brand, and a great communications plan.